What if the modern rise of China was built not only on revolution, but on suffering, silence, and millions of lives erased? What if the man credited with creating one of the most powerful nations on earth was also responsible for policies that led to one of the largest human catastrophes in recorded history? This is the story of Mao Zedong, the architect of modern China, a dictator who didn't just reshape a nation, but did so through forced collectivization, political purges, and campaigns that left entire populations devastated. Under his rule, millions were not just lost. They were starved, persecuted, silenced, and systematically destroyed. Yet today, his image still towers over Tiananmen Square. His legacy remains untouchable. His name is still revered by many. But how does a man like this become the foundation of a superpower? And what really happened behind the rise of modern China? Mao Zedong was born in 1893 in Shaoshan, a remote rural village in Hunan province, into a modest farming family. His father, strict and unyielding, demanded hard work and obedience. Mao, however, was rebellious, restless, and far more curious about ideas than the plow. The China he was born into was weak, fractured, and humiliated by foreign powers. The once mighty Qing dynasty had collapsed, and the nation was riddled with corruption, poverty, and warlordism. Mao's early life was shaped by the harsh realities of rural existence, but also by the fire of ambition and the hunger for change. As a young man, he immersed himself in revolutionary thought, reading about Marx, Lenin, and the wave of uprising sweeping across the globe. To Mao, communism was not theory, it was destiny, a blueprint for a China freed from oppression and inequality. And he was determined to see it through. In 1921, Mao became one of the founding members of the Chinese Communist Party, but his path to power was anything but smooth. China was torn apart by civil war between the communists and the nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek. The battles were brutal. Cities burned and lives shattered. Mao's forces were often on the brink of annihilation, yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, he orchestrated what would become one of the most legendary events in revolutionary history: the Long March. Over 6,000 miles of treacherous terrain, through mountains, swamps, and enemy territory, thousands of his followers perished. Hunger, disease, and relentless pursuit decimated his ranks. But those who survived became fanatically loyal. The Long March was more than survival. It was the forging of a leader and the myth of invincibility. By 1949, Mao had outmaneuvered and crushed the nationalists. On October 1st, he proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China, finally uniting a fractured nation under his command. To many, he was a hero, the man who restored order, expelled foreign influence, and promised equality. But absolute power carries its own hunger, and Mao was eager to feed it. The stage was set for a series of campaigns that would consolidate his rule and forever imprint his ideology on the nation. In 1958, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, a radical attempt to catapult China from a predominantly agrarian society into an industrial superpower almost overnight. The methods were draconian, private farming was abolished, and millions were forced into massive collective farms. Their lives stripped of autonomy, families no longer controlled their own food, their livelihoods, or even the simplest routines of daily life. Mao demanded rapid industrial growth, and ordinary citizens, including children, were ordered to produce steel in backyard furnaces, melting household tools, pots, and furniture to meet impossible quotas. Local officials, terrified of reporting failure, fabricated numbers, claiming surging crop yields and unprecedented steel production. In reality, harvests failed, food supplies collapsed, and famine swept across the land. Millions of men, women, and children perished from starvation, exposure, and exhaustion. Some estimates suggest as many as 45 million were lost during this period. Villages vanished, families were decimated, communities were silenced. Yet Mao remained untouchable. his myth of invincibility unchallenged. By the mid-1960s, Mao's position within the Communist Party was threatened. The catastrophic results of the Great Leap Forward had tarnished his reputation, but rather than step aside, Mao devised a new strategy to reaffirm his dominance: the Cultural Revolution. In 1966, he called on the youth of China, the Red Guards, to rise and purge the nation of old ideas. Schools closed, intellectuals were humiliated, imprisoned, or executed. Temples, artworks, and cultural treasures were destroyed. Books were burned. Even party officials loyal to Mao were not safe. Anyone could be accused of counter-revolutionary thought. Families betrayed each other. Friends turned on friends. Public struggle sessions became spectacles of terror where citizens were forced to confess fabricated crimes before crowds, often under threat of torture or death. Chaos spread across the country, and fear became the currency of survival. Mao had mastered not just power, but psychological control, weaving paranoia and loyalty into the fabric of everyday life. Mao's cult of personality became a force unto itself. His image was everywhere, in classrooms, workplaces, and public spaces. The little red book of his quotations was carried by millions, memorized, revered, and repeated like scripture. To question Mao was to risk life and limb. His control extended beyond policy. It penetrated thought itself. Under Mao, dissent was silenced, history was rewritten, and truth became whatever the party declared it to be. By the 1970s, China was exhausted. Years of political campaigns, social upheaval, and violence had left scars that would endure for generations. Mao himself aged and weakened, yet his influence remained absolute. When he died in 1976, the nation breathed a collective sigh, but his shadow persisted. The structures, ideologies, and myths he had established continued to govern society. Reforms would slowly modernize the economy, but Mao's imprint on China's political and cultural landscape was indelible. Today, Mao Zedong's legacy remains fiercely debated. To some, he is the unifier of China, the visionary who transformed a fractured, impoverished nation into a global superpower. To others, he is a tyrant whose policies and purges caused unparalleled suffering, where millions were starved, imprisoned, tortured, or executed. His image still dominates Tiananmen Square. His portrait adorns banknotes, and his influence shapes the nation's ideology. Mao's China is both a testament to his vision and a monument to human suffering. The paradox is staggering. A man who built a country while destroying millions of lives, leaving a legacy that continues to awe and horrify in equal measure. So, what do you think? Was Mao Zedong a visionary who forged a nation from chaos, or a ruthless dictator whose obsession with power left millions suffering? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective. And if you want to see more stories that reveal the hidden and shocking truths of history, make sure to subscribe. Sometimes, the reality is far darker than we ever imagine.